What's up, guys? Welcome back to Jimmy Talks. If you're new from the algorithm, I'm glad to have you here. If you're already a subscriber, it's great to talk to you again. All right, let's get into it and talk about why everything is so expensive nowadays. First off, we have inflation. Everyone is aware of this one acutely by now, so I won't spend too much time here. It's just one of the biggest reasons that everyone knows about, so I figured I'd start with that one. But inflation isn't just a buzzword, it's a relentless force that's squeezing our wallets, and it's tied to a bunch of chaotic decisions and events that have spiraled out of control since 2020. Basically, the primary reason for inflation is because the government continuously prints out money. That's really just the most simple way I can put it. Let's move on to the next reason, and arguably just as big as hyperinflation of our currency, which is illegal mass migration. Now, I'm not here to demonize people, but we need to talk about the numbers and the reality. The influx of millions of illegal aliens into the United States has put an enormous strain on our economy, and it's arguably the worst reason our money is losing value. And why would I say that? Because it's a hidden tax on every single one of us. Keyword and emphasis on hidden tax. When people cross the border illegally, many are provided with free housing, free healthcare, and free transportation. Sounds generous, right? And it is, but let's break down the cost. According to estimates from the Federation for American Immigration Reform, the annual cost of illegal immigration to U.S. taxpayers is roughly $150 billion. To put that into perspective, that's enough to give every American household about $1,200 a year. Free housing. Cities like New York and Chicago have spent hundreds of millions of dollars on shelters and hotel rooms for illegal aliens. For example, New York City alone shelled out over $1 billion in 2023 to house migrants in hotels and emergency shelters, while we have our own homeless citizens and people who can barely afford rent. Healthcare. Hospitals are legally required to treat anyone who shows up, regardless of status, racking up billions of dollars in uncompensated care. If they don't make money, they will find a different way to do so, and now the healthcare industry just got another excuse to rip you off with higher prices. Check out my health insurance video to see more about that. Anyways, and transportation, free bus rides, plane tickets, you name it. Local governments are footing the bill to move migrants across the country. In 2022, Texas spent $12 million just busing migrants to other cities. Now here is where it gets unhinged. Every dollar spent on these programs is money that we don't have. The government isn't sitting on a pile of gold. No, what they're doing is printing money to cover these costs, and every new dollar printed dilutes the value of the dollars in your pocket. It's like adding water to your coffee. It gets weaker and you feel it less. This is a direct hit to our purchasing power, and it's happening while we're already struggling to buy groceries or fill up the gas tank. It's simply just supply and demand. There's a massive amount of people who showed up the past 4 years in our country. And more people means more demand for everything, like housing, food, medical care, you name it. But the supply? It's not keeping up. Mass migration is incredibly expensive. One last caveat I want to input here. I hear a counter argument to this, that illegals will do jobs that Americans don't want to do. And why is that? It's because the pay sucks. Well, the pay sucks because these guys are working for a couple bucks an hour because they're illegal. That is the reason the pay is low, because those people are being taken advantage of. Now tell me, if there's no one to do those jobs in rural areas where employment is hard to find, do you think some young adults would definitely take a job working on a farm or picking produce for a modest wage, assuming all the illegal immigrants are gone? Most definitely yes. But I just wanted to add that tiny tidbit in there. Anyways, this brings me on to my next point, which is cost push inflation. It's a concept. This is when the cost of producing goods and services goes up and businesses pass those costs on to you, the consumer. It's not because people suddenly want more stuff, it's because making the stuff people want to buy is getting pricier. Take the invasion at the border issue, and yes, I will call it an invasion. I don't have anything against these people. It is what it is. But anyways, more people in the system means more demand for housing, driving up rent and home prices. In 2023 alone, rent prices were up 8.3% from the previous year, and a big chunk of that is because there aren't enough homes to go around. If you deport the illegals and also stop spending money on them, inflation and the housing market plus rent would go down dramatically. This isn't because, oh, Jimmy Talks hates migrants. No, it's simply just basic supply and demand. We cannot keep taking care of the rest of the world. Everybody is feeling it. The people who lived here first, the people who are U.S. citizens. And I don't even blame people for trying to get into our country. In fact, I understand why they do, because a lot of South America is super poor and violent. But honestly, is that my problem? No. And now my wife, as well as my fellow Americans, are feeling the dramatic squeeze in their wallets because of it. Anyways, with more demand and limited supply, prices skyrocket. It's that simple. Same goes for food, healthcare, and even basic utilities. The supply chain can't handle the extra strain, so businesses raise prices to cover their cost. It's a vicious cycle and it's hitting us where it hurts. But illegal migration is just one piece of this chaotic puzzle. Let's talk about excessive government spending, because boy oh boy, does the government love to spend like it's playing Monopoly with fake money. Fraud, waste, and abuse are running rampant. Take the COVID relief bills. Over $5 trillion in stimulus checks were pumped into the economy between the Trump and Biden administrations. Sounds great, right? Because it's free money. Except it wasn't free. Ain't nothing in life free. I'm sorry, guys. That cash fueled demand while supply chains were choking, pushing prices through the roof. And don't get me started on the waste. The Government Accountability Office reported that billions of dollars were lost to fraud and unemployment benefits and small business loans during the pandemic. Billions of dollars. That's money that could have fixed roads, built schools, or, here's a crazy idea, not have even been printed in the first place. I understand with COVID that money needed to go into the economy though, and it was just one of the hardest decisions the 2016 to 2020 era Trump had to make. But anyways, there's this endless cycle of sending money overseas while we're drowning here at home. The US has been playing global Santa Claus and giving everyone money as a gift, and it's killing us. From 2020 to 2024, we sent $113 billion to Ukraine to support their fight against Russia. That's enough to build 10,000 new homes or fund healthcare for millions of Americans. And it's not just Ukraine. We've been sending $3.8 billion annually to Israel for military aid since 2009. Meanwhile, our infrastructure could use some serious work. A lot of schools are underfunded, and our hardworking citizens are struggling to get care. Every dollar we send abroad is another dollar we don't have here, and to cover it, the government just keeps printing more money. Each new dollar weakens the one you're holding, making your groceries, gas, and rent cost more. This is not American exceptionalism, and I'm tired of seeing my countrymen get torn to shreds financially to take care of people who are not American citizens. Speaking of gas, though, let's talk about how the Russia-Ukraine war jacked up prices at the pump. When Russia invaded Ukraine in February 2022, global energy markets went into a tailspin. Russia is one of the world's largest oil and gas producers, and sanctions on their exports caused a supply shock. Gas prices in the U.S. hit over $5 a gallon in June 2022, more than double what they were at the start of the pandemic. Oil prices spiked 21% after the invasion, and since everything we daily purchase, like food and other goods, depends on transportation, which uses oil, those higher fuel costs rippled through the economy. Even in 2025, with oil prices stabling between $65 to $85 a barrel, we're still feeling the aftershocks. Energy is the lifeblood of the economy, and when it gets expensive, everything else follows. Now let's go back in time to understand why our money is losing value in the first place. Buckle up for a history lesson that'll make your head spin. In 1971, President Richard Nixon did something that changed the world forever, and he took the US dollar off the gold standard. Before 1971, the dollar was backed by gold, meaning you could, in theory, trade your dollars for a fixed amount of gold, like $35 per ounce to be exact. This kept the money supply in check because you couldn't just print gold out of thin air. But Nixon faced a problem. Inflation was creeping up, gold reserves were rapidly reducing, and other countries were starting to demand their gold back. So, in August of 1971, in what's now called the Nixon shock, he announced that the dollar would no longer be convertible to gold. He also slapped on wage and price controls and a 10% import surcharge to boost American exports. At first, people loved it. The stock market soared, and 73% of Americans supported the move. But here's where it gets bad. There was no plan to get out of those controls. By 1973, the controls were gone, and the dollar was floating, its value determined by markets and not gold. The result here was inflation occurring faster than it had in the past. The dollar plunged by a third in the 1970s and inflation soared into double digits in the 80s. Why? Because without the gold standard, the government could print as much money as it wanted. Fast forward to today, and that printing press has been working overtime, especially since 2020. Every new dollar makes the one you have worth less, and we're all paying the price. Guys, try to offset this by having your money work for you and accruing interest. High interest savings accounts, certificates of deposit, otherwise called CDs, and investing into a Roth IRA and 401k diligently. Anyways, let's move on to the next big reason, COVID. And I hate this one because people will just say, oh, COVID, for literally anything negative that happened, and they won't give any follow-up clarification. So I'll tell you how. COVID turned the economy into a massive dumpster fire. When the pandemic hit in March of 2020, the world pretty much just shut down. Factories closed, shipping routes stopped, and supply chains stopped. You couldn't get a new car, appliances like a fridge or a washer and dryer, or even a roll of toilet paper without a fight. Manufacturing took a massive hit, with semiconductors, which are the backbone of modern technology, facing shortages, which crippled car production, and shipping costs skyrocketed as busy shipping ports were backed up for miles. Think of the port of Shanghai and the port of Los Angeles, but nothing is coming in or leaving. It's kind of crazy when you think about it, really. In 2021, the cost of a shipping container from Asia to the United States jumped as much as 1,000%. Companies couldn't keep up with the demand, so they simply just raised prices. That's cost-push inflation, as we discussed earlier, in action again. The used car market was a perfect example of this. With people avoiding public transit and rental car companies selling off their fleets, demand for used cars exploded, but supply was almost non-existent. A global chip shortage meant fewer new cars, so naturally, all we had left was used cars, and the used car prices shot up. By 2022, the average used car cost $27,000, which is crazy. It was up 40% from 2019. To put it into perspective, basically the average used car in 2019 was 20 grand, and those same cars became 27 grand a mere year later. Even now in 2025, the market is only just starting to cool off, with prices dropping slightly as supply chains recover. But we're still nowhere near pre-pandemic levels, and that's still 5 years later. The ripple effects of COVID are still hurting us, from higher grocery bills to pricier electronics. So let's recap this economic horror show. Hyperinflation and money printer going burr. Illegal mass migration is draining billions of dollars, fueling demand while supply lags, and driving up prices. Government spending is out of control, with fraud and waste pouring fuel on the inflation fire. We were sending billions to Ukraine, and we still are to Israel, while our own people struggle. The Russia-Ukraine war spiked energy prices, making everything more expensive. Nixon's decision to ditch the gold standard unleashed the money printing monster, and COVID supply chain disruptions are still kicking us while we're down. It's a perfect storm, and we're all stuck in it. But here's the thing, all hope is not lost. There are solutions to this mess, and I'm going to give you 3 big ones. They're kind of controversial, and they're what we need to get back on track. The first one is mass deportations. I already know people are going to get pissy in the comments about this one, but hear me out before you start bashing the keyboard and yelling at me and calling me a bunch of names. The $150 billion we're spending annually on illegal immigration is simply just unsustainable. It would cost approximately $315 billion to carry out mass deportations, but we'd have our money back in 3 years with savings. Or maybe not, because the so-called experts in money, our politicians, put us into massive debt. Thank God they didn't decide to be financial planners for some poor old people. Anyways, mass deportations of illegal aliens would reduce the strain on our resources like housing, healthcare, transportation, you name it. The housing and rental market would crash if they were all sent back, and people would actually be able to afford rent and a home again with all the supply, but way less demand. Fewer people means less demand, which eases pressure on prices. It's not about cruelty, it's about math. If we can't afford to support everyone, we have to prioritize our own citizens. The Center for Immigration Studies estimates that deporting 1 million people could save $20 billion in just 1 year. That's money we could use to fix our roads, fix our school systems, build more houses, and, we could even lower taxes. The next one would be stronger border security. Prevention is better than the cure. If we secure our borders with stronger enforcement, like more agents, better technology, and actual walls where they're needed, we can stop the influx before it starts. The Border Patrol reported over 2.5 million apprehensions of illegal aliens in 2023 alone. That's a tidal wave we can't keep absorbing. A secure border means less pressure on our economy, less money printing, and more stability for prices. It's not about shutting people out. It's about controlling who comes in and ensuring we can handle it. Now, of course, this wouldn't stop every single person, as the absolutely most determined people can find a way, but it would surely slow crossings down a lot. The next solution here, and my final one, would be to slash government spending and to stop printing money. The government needs to get its house in order. Cut the fraud, cut the waste, cut the abuse, and start with a full audit of every federal program. The Congressional Budget Office projects that the national debt will hit $40 trillion by 2030 if we keep spending like this. That's a disaster waiting to happen. Fix it now or we collapse within the next decade. Yes, it is that serious. Start cleaning house. We also need to rethink foreign aid. Did we really need to send $113 billion to Ukraine, which in fairness has mostly stopped, or $3.8 billion to Israel every year, which is ongoing currently and has been since 2009? Let's focus on America first by fixing our infrastructure, supporting our veterans, our homeless, our elderly, our children, which are the most vulnerable populations, and invest into our future. And for the love of all things holy, stop printing money. It's a joke. Tie the dollar back to something real, like a modernized gold standard, to force discipline on the money supply. But there you have it, folks. The reason everything is so expensive are messy, interconnected, and frankly, infuriating. What do you think of the video? Let me know in the comments below, and let me know what other topics you want to see covered. If you want to support my work and see the message get out to other people, consider donating to my Patreon or my Bitcoin and Solana. Links are in the description below. I will see all of you lovely people in the next video. And as I always say at the end of my videos, stay true to yourselves. Jimmy Talks out.